بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. Dear sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum. We started a habit of every night remembering a group of people. To remember one night, we remembered those who were having problems. One night, we remember the younger ones. Bless you guys. Today, if you agree, I don't know, was it light 2? I think it was second night. I mentioned the idea that all the energy which is given in us to go to the depth of religion, once we're stuck in the surface, it may lead to certain fixations or religious waswas. I've been receiving a lot of messages about this, that either someone has religious waswas themselves or maybe a family member. So I thought maybe today we can recite a salawat for all of them, and then a couple of minutes I'm going to be talking about it as well. It's going to be so difficult. I've been there. There were times it would take me 2-3 hours to pray or do a ghusl. Sometimes I would start at Maghrib Azan until midnight. I still hadn't managed to pray. So I know how difficult it can be for them and their family. Let us all join and recite salawat for them so they know we care. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. I also want to mention a few verses and hadiths that could help. One of the problems with religious waswas, if it's, for example, with prayer, masalan, you keep thinking maybe recitation, you've made a mistake. The person keeps repeating it. Or it could be in wuzu. Did the water reach everywhere? Or in najasa tahara, am I pure or not? The problem is that the way we experience this or that person, it appears it's as if it's a religious caution. In our mind, the way it is, it's like, oh, if I don't do this again, if I don't say that, if I don't repeat it, my prayer is not going to be accepted. If my prayer is not going to be accepted, I'm going to be in trouble with God. Right? So it presents itself, this religious waswas and doubt, it's as if it's a religious caution, as if you're being careful, as if you're doing something for God, right? This is how, I need to say it one more time so that God accepts it. But when you look at the ahadith, it's very interesting. The imams are very, very firm that even though it appears like it's a religious caution, it's not. Allah, the imams say this is the whisper of shaitan. And I was talking to one of the people who was going through this. He said, no, how could it be shaitan? It's not like an external voice. Masalan, imagine we think that if it's shaitan, it should sound like this. Jawad, do it one more time. But shaitan is smarter than that. Do you think shaitan is dumb? No. So shaitan, although it's a metaphor, Allah later on, I wish we had time, I would explain what's the machinery in the brain that leads to this. But it's smarter than that. It's not going to come and say, you know what, hello, I'm shaitan, please repeat your prayer. No. It pretends like it's you. So the thought starts with I. It's a first person pronoun. It's, I have to do this again. But we have many, many hadith that the Imam says this is the whisper of the shaitan, and if you do it, you're not being religiously cautious, you are obeying shaitan. Literally, I even have the word from you. Imam Sadiq is saying if a person does that, they're obeying shaitan. So don't allow it to trick you that you're being cautious. Another thing which is interesting, we have this verse in the Quran that the Imams would tell people who have this condition to recite, وَإِمَّا يَنْزَغَنَّكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ. They would say, remember this is from shaitan and seek refuge in God, ask for help from God. Another verse the Imams would tell people, a person goes to the Imam and says, I fell down, my finger or nail broke, so I put some bandage, just like something over it, and now for wuzu, what should I do? Should I take it out, put the water? Imam just mentions one verse in the Quran which is so beautiful. مَا يُرِدُ اللَّهُ لِيَجْعَلَ عَلَيْكُم مِّنْ حَرَجٍ. God didn't want to put any difficulty for you. وَلَكِنْ يُرِدُ لِيُطَهِّرَكُم. God didn't tell you to have wuzu so that it creates difficulty for you. As soon as it becomes difficult, make sure that's shaitan. Be sure. Wuzu is meant to be easy. We have so many hadith, we don't have time for you. As soon as anything, prayer, wuzu, tahara, looks difficult, it's shaitan. Okay? Now, how can we approach this? See, just because you heard these things, it's not going to stop. Right? So the next time you want to pray or you want to purify yourself, it's going to happen again. All these thoughts would come. Oh, I have to do it again. I have to do it again. Oh, the fatwa of the Maraj is that you ignore that. Even if you're sure you have to do it, you ignore that and act as if it's correct. And by doing this, it's not going to go. But every time you do this, every time you go against that thought, they become weaker and weaker and weaker. And in a few weeks or a few months, they'll completely go away. Been there, done that, right? I've been there. That's why I really get you, how difficult it is. But the way to go through it is to ignore them. No matter what they say, you say, no, I am tahir. If it says you have to repeat your prayer, no, I am not going to repeat it. The marja didn't tell you it's better if you not repeat it. It says you have to continue and not repeat it, okay? Otherwise, you're following shaitan. Hope. Please recite the salawat. Okay, so yesterday we started this discussion that dunya and akhirah are both here. Dunya is the surface, akhirah is the depth. And this world is not dunya. Now a question may be, okay, then what is that dunya which the prophets, the religious scriptures, including Quran, and the Ahl al-Bayt kept condemning it? We have so many hadith that dunya is bad, dunya is bad, dunya is bad. What is that if it's not this world? Ayatollah Jawadi Amoli in his tafsirs, he has a beautiful point. He says, to help us understand that the dunya that the Ahl al-Bayt, Quran and prophets condemned is not this physical world, ask you a question. He says, what do you think is dunya? This thing that is condemned. Is it the sky? Is it the earth? Its trees? The water? The plants? How could these be condemned? These are some of the signs of God. Quran itself says, these things around you, these are my signs. These are not dunya. These are not to be condemned. In fact, there's a very beautiful story in Nahj al-Balagha in the Hikmat session at the end, story 131, Hikmah 131. Imam Ali hears that a person is condemning this world. Right? Because a lot of us, unfortunately, we have this misunderstanding that this world is bad. So Imam Ali is listening that someone is condemning the world, and Imam Ali goes and speaks to this person. أيها الظامل الدنيا, you who are accusing the world, do you even know what this world is? And then Imam Ali mentions a few features of this world that I'm going to read for you from here. Just please recite the salawat. إن الدنيا دار الصدق لمن صدقها ودار عافية لمن فهم عنها. Imam says this world is a house of truth for the person who appreciates it. It's a place of safety for the person who knows it. ودار غنى لمن تزود منها. It's a place to collect so many things if you know how to. مسجد أحباء الله. It's a place in which the people who fell in love with God experience awe and wonder of encountering the greatness of God. Musalla wa mahbatu wahyillah. It says mahbatu wahyillah. This is the place in which God established communication with insan. متجر أولياء الله اكتسبوا فيها الرحمة وربحوا فيها الجنة. Imam is saying this is the place in which awliya of God gained access to heaven. ربحوا فيها الجنة. It's a very good place. So again we have another proof that this world is not dunya. Dunya is a way of living in this world. And if you look at the Quran, there are many places in which Quran doesn't refer to it as dunya. It says hayat ad-dunya, the life of dunya, giving us a sign that it's not about this reality, it's about the way you are in it. So a person could be in this place and be stuck in the surface and live in dunya. Another person could be in the same place and go to its depth. which is what Imam Ali says in the rest of that, right? He says, فَضَمَّهَا رِجَالٌ وَحَمِدَهَا آخَرُونَ. Some people will accuse this, and some people will praise it. Is it okay if we just be careful a little bit? Sorry, the people outside, there's a little bit of noise coming. They're not hearing me. If please recite the salawat, maybe they would listen. I'm so sorry, I hate to be that guy who tells people to be silent. It's just that I've put so many things here to mention you like in 40 minutes. I just want to make sure I don't get distracted. I'm so sorry. I apologize to everyone. Okay. Now, what are we saying? So we said Imam Ali is saying, and yesterday we mentioned the verse from the Quran, that in Surah Rum, verse number 7, that this world is not dunya. It's a way you live inside it. You could either live in a way, interact with this world in a way, you're in dunya. You could interact in another way, and you're in akhirah. So all of those things that we had, you must have heard this hadith, for example, حُبُّ الدُّنْيَا رَأْسُ كُلُّ خَطِيئَةٍ. That love for the dunya is the head, the root of all those problems. None of that is about this world, this reality. All of that are about a way of being in this world. See, that's the point I'm trying to really bring it home tonight. In fact, Ayatollah Jawadi Amali has a point which is so beautiful. He says, if insan wasn't in this world, without insan, there would be no dunya. Why? Because dunya is not anything outside. Dunya is a way in which you interact with the world. And this is why you can very easily come out of dunya. Let's go to another hikmah by Imam Ali Nahjul Balagha. You must have heard this. Ya dunya, ghurri ghayri, la hajata li fik, talaqtuha thalathan la raj'ata fiha. Imam says to dunya, don't try deceiving me. There's no gain for me in you. I've left you and there's no return. Ayatollah Jawadi Amali says, pay attention, see, Imam Ali says, I've left dunya. At the surface level, you may feel like I'm not paying attention to this world. But again, as I said, that's wrong. Imam Ali says, see, I'm no longer living in dunya. That's a way of living in that world which I have stopped. And as soon as you stop living in the surface, you're already living in akhirah, which is what Imam Hussein said. كَأَنَّ الدُّنْيَا لَمْ تَكُنْ كَأَنَّ الدُّنْيَا لَمْ تَكُنْ وَالْآخِرَةَ لَمْ تَزَلْ. The same thing Imam Ali said, Imam Hussein is saying it. It's as if the dunya never existed and akhirah has always been there. So we should know that it is possible to leave dunya, as Imam Ali said, طَلَّقْتُكَ ثَلَاثًا, and enter into living in akhirah very much in this world. Now, in order to give you an example of what does it mean that dunya is a way of interacting with this world, I'm going to give you this example. Imagine a person who has reached a certain age and casual relationships are very salient to him, right? The excitement of flirting, the high of meeting a new stranger, and this is so interesting for them. And they keep seeking and pursuing these kind of relationships, right? They meet a person, they get excited, they have this high, and as they go, all their everything, everything they say, all the thing they try to do is focused on achieving a goal, a certain action. And as soon as they reach that action and it's performed, it feels like it collapses, right? So they start the whole process again with another person, right? From one casual relationships to another. Now imagine if this person gives up this extensive pursuit of erotic partners and instead decides this person to settle and commit to a relationship in which both parties, they want to know each other at a deeper level, not just the surface, but to really get to know each other and know each other deeply. Not just know the other one deeply, but to also be known. A lot of people would say, yes, this person has grown up, right? From a kind of interaction with other people that was so superficial that you would only know the surface of that person, and both parties would be left afterwards feeling like they were not understood. They would be like, it's as if they felt maybe not satisfied. That deep yearning for attachment, for a love, for someone to know them deeply, to appreciate not just their surface or their body, but the realities of who they are. All of that was in the first way of interacting with others. All of that was left unaccomplished. But as soon as the person decides, you know what, I want to, instead of that, get to know someone deeper, commit to this. And this is what love, by the way, is. This increasing mutual self-disclosure, where you get to open up the deeper levels of who you are to someone and to get to know them deeper as well. This is love. So see, in these two different relationships, two different types, nothing changed. The same person, the same world, the same people. It's just the way they interacted became different. So when I'm saying that akhirah and dunya are here as well, it's very similar to that. In the same way that you can either know the surface of a person, know them casually, or you can get to know them very deeply and also be known by them in this kind of intimate, mutual understanding. You can have the same relationship with this world. You can either be in this world and only know its superficial, shallow level, or you can get to know the world and its reality very deeply and also feel that you are known by it. This kind of deep participatory knowledge, which that's why Islamic mysticism is called irfan, knowledge, ma'rifah. So this is what I mean by this idea that akhirah is available right now. It's just the way you're interacting with the world. And now I want to mention another thing. Bring that example to your mind, a person who has a deep yearning for a kind of, there's a need inside for love, for understanding, but the way they're trying to satisfy that need is by casual encounters, maybe one night with this person, a few days with that person. And every time, as soon as they leave, how do they feel? Maybe heartbroken, still yearning. Doesn't that remind you of some of the description of Jahannam, of hell? That there you'll feel thirsty, you keep having water, and you get thirstier. That's not just about some later time. It's about right now in this world. You can interact in a way in this world that you keep chasing things, but they make you thirstier. If you don't go into the depth of this reality, you can keep having casual relationships and still that deep yearning you have for being understood, for relationship, for intimacy is not satisfied. You keep having the water and you become thirstier. But at the same time, you can have another intimate relationship, commit to someone and get to know them. Now I'm saying the same kind of commitment could be made into this world, and you get to go to its depth and see what it's at its depth. Okay. Yes. So now you can see how much, unfortunately, some of us, we've made a mistake in misplacing the condemnation which we can find in the ahadith and in Quran about dunya. Instead of putting it on a certain way of being in this world, we have misplaced that condemnation on this world. So there are a lot of people who say, no, this world, you know what, it's not good enough. This life, this world, this is all dunya. One day akhirah will come. And so by misunderstanding what dunya is, we end up condemning the life of this world, which is in fact one of God's biggest gift to us. What was Imam Ali saying? Daru Sidq. So many beautiful qualities it has. Not only this is one of God's most beautiful gifts, the life of this world that we have and should not be condemned, This is the only opportunity we have to actualize and realize and gain akhirah and heaven. What did Imam Ali say in that hikmah? رَبَهُ بَحَالْ جَنَّةِ. This is your opportunity to gain access to heaven. In the other one we mentioned in Khutbah Muttaqin, he said, فَهُمْ وَالْجَنَّةِ كَمَنْ قَدْ رَآهَا فَهُمْ فِيهَا مُنَعَّمُونَ. This life is the place in which you can gain access to heaven, to akhirah, and if you don't do it here, that's it, gone. This is such an important place. And instead of understanding how important, how beautiful this world is, instead of using this opportunity of this beautiful life to actualize heaven, to access akhirah, we spend it condemning it and waiting for a heaven that we have made in our head that will come only after we die. Meanwhile, we turn this one into a hell. Even though I told you hell exists right now. Although this is something that I will come back to in future nights and try to explain it in more details. Okay, so now we know this world is not dunya. This world is not the thing which is condemned. The thing which is condemned, it's about a way of being in this world, like that relationships. So what is that? What is condemned? What is that bad thing that hubbud dunya ra'su kullu khati'ah? It's very interesting. Quran gives us a few qualities about that. And it's also very interesting that something in the Quran confirms what I just said. Quran many times doesn't refer to it even as dunya. It refers to it as what? Hayat dunya, the life of dunya. Which is exactly confirming what I said, that it's not about a place. It's about a hayat, it's about a lifestyle. It's about a way of living in this world. And for example, in Surah An'am, verse 32, what do we find? وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لَعِبٌ وَلَهْوٌ. Hayat al-dunya. That thing which is confirmed is nothing but distraction and game. خب, if hayat al-dunya is lahv, is distraction, what does that tell you? That in this world, you can get distracted. خب, distraction always means going away from something important. That means in this world, akhirah is there. The important thing is already here. And dunya is only a life in which you are distracted from the important things in this world, which is the akhirah. So even when Quran wants to speak about hayat dunya, it's already telling you that akhirah is here. Or hala, for example, and again in Surah Hadid, Quran mentions 5 qualities of what is that way of interacting with the reality that would get you stuck in the surface. Right? Mathalan, it says, lahv, la'ib, zina, tafakhur, takathur. That, I think this is inshallah for another series. What are those ways of interacting with this world, being in this world, that will get you stuck in the surface? We don't have time to go into that. Right? But Quran makes it very clear that it's not about this place. It's about the way you are in it. There are important things here to be achieved. In this very world, you can access heaven. And in this very world, you can be in hell. No wonder it's so hard. A lot of us were so scared that one day we'll go to hell, which would be so difficult, not knowing that already most of the difficulties of hell, we could be in them. مَا مِنْكُمْ إِلَّا وَارِدُهَا. This hadith, this verse in the Quran, that is no one unless they have entered hell and then they have to go through hell to get out. We always think that's going to happen later on, not knowing that literally in this place we could be in hell. And no wonder it's so difficult. Allah will explain about this more as we go on in the next few nights. And maybe a little bit tonight as well. خب, what happens, let's say, because a lot of you may be saying, Sheikh, if heaven is accessible here, as Imam Ali said, رَبَهُ بَحَالْ جَنَّةِ فَهُمْ فِيهَا مُنَعَّمُونَ كَأَنَّ الدُّنْيَا لَمْ تَكُنْ وَالْآخِرَةُ لَمْ تَزَلْ. How come we're not feeling it? How come we're not experiencing it? I'm saying the reason for that is that we got stuck at the surface. That whole thing about lahv and la'ib? Because we had a superficial understanding of it, we didn't manage to learn its lesson and not get stuck. We actually got distracted. And I want to tell you later on that even our religious narrative not only didn't help us because it was superficial, it actually contributed to us getting stuck on the surface. What happens when you get stuck in the surface? In the same verse, in the same surah, Surah Hadid, verse 16, God explains it. طال الأمد فقست قلوبهم. Quran says when this happens, when you get stuck at the surface, when you're distracted with the surface level of this dunya, with hayat dunya, slowly, your heart becomes hardened. Your hearts become hardened. Imagine a river, a stream, which is carrying some sediments, maybe some pebbles, some sand. Slowly, these pebbles could settle down, these sands could come on top of them, and if the flow of the river is not that strong, slowly, maybe these pebbles will get stronger and stronger, sands will fill their holes, and there would be no room for the flow of the water, and if the flow is not very strong, slowly, the river may die. The river may die, the stream may die, and you'll see that where there was a river, now you only have stones. Quran is using that metaphor to speak about us, our heart. And of course, even heart is a metaphor. Quran is saying, see, life flow, life energy, this high that God is, and it's giving us this life, it's coming through you. This flow is coming through you. But if you are not careful, you may end up doing things, get pebbles on the way, that slowly build up and stop that flow of God's love and life to come through you. And your hearts become hardened, and the water flow stops. Haven't many of you felt sometimes that, I don't feel alive? Haven't you who sometimes told your partner, come on, we need to do something to feel alive? That's what Quran is saying. Quran is saying us, we have turned into stones. But I wish I could tell you how crazy this is. Right now, the things which have become so normal for us, this way of life, according to Quran, this is literally hell. We have become so used to it that we're not even understanding what has happened to us. Because our religious narrative was so superficial, it wasn't alarming enough to wake us up that the life we are in right now, it's pretty much the worst it can ever get. In Ayatollah Jawad Yamuli, when he's talking about this verse in Surah Hadid, he reminds us of another verse, verse 74 of Surah Baqarah. Right? Let me read it so I don't want to make a mistake. It says, ثُمَّ قَسَتْ قُلُوبُكُم مِّن بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ, and your hearts became so hardened after that, فَهِيَ كَالْحِجَارَةِ أَوْ أَشَدُّ قَسْوَةً. God is saying your hearts have become so hard, it's like a stone, but actually no, it's even harder than stone. And you're like, why is it like that? It says, see, even with rocks, every now and then, maybe a stream would spring out. Or maybe the rock would fall, it would collapse, and water would come through it. But it says, what's happened to you guys? Your hearts have hardened so much. You're here, you don't see me. Not only you don't feel God, you don't experience God, you don't experience yourself, you don't experience Akhirah. What has happened to you? Do you realize what I'm saying? That we are stuck at the worst place, and we don't even know. We didn't even know. Imam Ali says, in this world you should see God. God should be the reality of your life. You should be enjoying heaven. We don't have any of that. And do you think God is attacking us in the Quran, for example, saying, ثُمَّ قَسَتْ قُلُوبُكُمْ فَهِيَ كَالْحِجَارَةِ, your heart? No, why would He want to attack us? God is hurting that we are like this. He said, what are you doing to yourself? Come on, guys, wake up. This world doesn't have to be so difficult. Imam Ali has a hadith. You don't need to suffer in this world. It doesn't need to be like this. It's just that you have stopped the flow of life. Your hearts have become hardened. And now this is also a litmus test to see if our understanding of religion is helping us or not. Maybe Imam Ali told us where religion should get us. Quran told us, see, this is where we need to go. فَهُمْ وَالْجَنَّةِ كَمَنْ قَدْ رَآهَا. In this very world, you have to be in as if you've reached Akhirah, you can enjoy heaven. Or another hadith, they ask Imam Ali, have you seen God? He says, do you think I would worship a God I haven't seen? As you can see God, you can see Akhirah, and you can enjoy heaven. But where are we right now? We don't feel alive, we don't see God, it literally feels like hell. If I mention some of the descriptions of hell, and then talk about our life, you would see it matches completely. Hope religion was there to help us out of this, to get us to where Imam Ali said, is it doing that? If not, then you get why I'm been killing myself to tell you that if we get stuck at the surface of religion, it's almost useless. Which is what the Prophet said. The Prophet said they will keep praying, but it will make them farther from God. Or Imam Baqir said there are people who pray for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, but it has no impact on them. Because the litmus test is there. Did it soften your heart or not? If it didn't, we need to change it. We need to go deeper in it. Please recite the salawat. Prayer is meant to be a drill that can drill through the stone of our heart and open it up. There's a story of one of the scholars, he was crying. I say, why are you crying? He was reflecting on 74:2, right? Verse 74 of Surah Baqarah. He was saying, we are in ghafla and we don't know it. That's the problem. See, when you're stuck at the superficial level of religion, what do they define ghafla as? They say ghafla is when you're not thinking about God. So if you ask them that, are we right now in ghafla of God or not? They would say, no, well done, you're speaking about God. That scholar was saying, see what have you done to Quran? You could be speaking about God and still be in ghafla. What is ghafla? Ghafla is not speaking about God. Ghafla is not seeing God. I wish you would get what I'm saying. I'm so sorry this tongue is not articulate enough to tell you how terrible the situation we are in right now is. And how all of religion came us to basically make our life easier, get us stuck out of this trap of dunya. And it hasn't done that yet, but it can. Saying this is ghafla. You know what is ghafla? When you can't see God. When life doesn't make sense. When you can't even see yourself. When you don't enjoy it. Do you feel God's love? Imam Hussein in Dua Arafah, look at Dua Arafah and see that God, how much He loves you. He says, before you were born, God loved you. Every time you have a problem, God is embracing you in His love. وَوَسِعَ الْمُسْتَقِيلِينَ رَأْفَةً وَرَحْمَةً وَحِلْمًا. Even when you make mistakes, God surrounds you with رَأْفَةً وَرَحْمَةً وَحِلْمًا. Do you see that? No, that's ghafla. And I'm not attacking any one of us. We're all stuck like that. We're all in the same situation. So when I told you the other day that when we say Imam Hussein stood for justice, that's true, but it's so basic, this is what I mean. Standing for justice is great. It's so much higher than where I am right now, but it's still nothing compared to what we should have all achieved. We're all waiting for one day to die to go to heaven, not knowing this is it, this is the opportunity to make it. And what we are in right now looks very much like hell. Although inshallah later on I'll bring verses from the Quran to explain what I mean, that this is hell. This is. Why is it so difficult? Do you remember? We said we need to make sense of the suffering in our narrative because we're stuck in hell. Because we're stuck in the surface of this world. Let's speak a little bit about what are these pebbles, what are these sediments that stop the flow of life, of connection to God in the river of our heart. Allama Tabatabai, in the Risalat al-Insan, in which he's trying to explain what insan is, based on Quran, he has a chapter which the name is so beautiful. He says, Hayatul Insan Dharfu Nafsih. The life of insan, 60, 70, 80, 90 years, is the container of his or her self. What does that mean? It means you're here for 60, 70, 80 years, no matter how many years, okay? Whatever you do every second of your life, every little decision you make is like an ingredient you're putting in a container. By the end of it, whatever you've put there, the overall sum of all the things you've done, all the things you've fought, all the things you've seen, all the things you heard, is you. That is called insan. That is the thing that you call I. Right? Imagine in two houses, let me also make an example which softens things a little bit. I think I've created so much tension. Imagine in two houses at noon, 12 o'clock, they put 2 pots on the stove. 12 o'clock, noon, 2 pots on the stove. Hot water in both of them. So the starting point is the same, right? Now, in one of the pots, they decide to put, for example, meat, maybe some onions, tomato, some yellow split peas. The other house, in the pot which had hot water, they put, for example, meat, green vegetables, herbs, lime. Even though at 12 o'clock, both the pots were the same, hot water inside them, in a few hours, one of the houses, they're going to have qeymeh, the other house, they're going to have ghormeh sabzi. They started exactly the same, but based on what they put it, they're going to have 2 different experiences. Allah is saying you're the same. You have 70 years to cook yourself. Whatever you do, whatever you see, whatever you hear, whatever resentment you keep in, everything is like an ingredient that you put inside yourself. And what are you cooking? Yourself. After 8 years, all the things that you've put, they become you. And by the way, it's not like, for example, that qeymeh is different to its ingredients. No, the qeymeh is literally the ingredients. It's not like you have a qeymeh and you put ingredients. No. So he says, you are literally all you do. Hayatul insan dharfu hayatih. And it's not just, for example, a few actions, like if you lied or not, or if you prayed or not. No, every single decision. Maybe at every single second of our life, every decision we make, do I get up for this person or not? Do I smile or not? Do I share this or not? He says you are either creating a kind of person that can see heaven, or you're going to create a person that is stuck in hell and trapped in dunya. And this is why he says the original meaning of Pul Sirat. This Pul Sirat has already started. Have you heard of the bridge of Sirat? That they say it's a very thin bridge that you walk over. And if you make one mistake, you'll fall into hell. But you have to be very careful, walk on that narrow bridge to get yourself out of hell into heaven. He says that Pul Sirat is every single decision you're making in this life, which will determine whether you become a kind of person like Imam Ali described, that here, فَهُمْ وَالْجَنَّةِ كَمَنْ قَدْ رَآهَا فَهُمْ فِيهَا مُنَعَمُونَ, or you're a person like me, stuck in hell, وَمَا مِنْكُمْ إِلَّا وَارِدُهَا, suffering, trapped in dunya, and cannot see God, cannot feel God. His heart is hardened and is full of life, and world just doesn't make sense. So this is what we mean. This is where all those pebbles come. Do you remember Quran said, ثُمَّ قَسَتْ قُلُوبُكُمْ, or طَالَ الْأَمَدْ فَقَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ, that their hearts became hardened? This is how it happens, based on the ingredients we put inside ourselves. Now with ghormeh sabzi or with qeymeh, you can also feel the same thing. Maybe a person can cook a food that is so beautiful, they enjoy it, or maybe another person can cook a food which is so unhealthy. We sit at the table of the food that we cook ourselves, and that's ourselves. Now, the problem here is that just knowing this is not going to cut it. Because someone may say, okay, from tomorrow, I'll start putting other things inside myself. But it's not that easy. Because the problem is, once you put something in the pot long enough, it's going to become so immersed with other ingredients, which is not easy to take it out. The same is with us. If you put something inside yourself for a long time, if you just repeat it enough times, it becomes so hard to remove it. In Islamic spirituality, we have 2 concepts called hal and malakeh. Hal is when you've put something inside yourself for a little while, so it's easier to do it. But still, you're not forced. It's not a compulsion, right? So maybe initially you made a decision. Should I do this or should I not? You were thinking. But after a while of doing it, it becomes a hal, which means that it's a little bit easier to do it. You don't need to put as much effort into deciding. It's a little bit more impulsive. But if you do that more number of times, it turns into a malakeh. And what a malakeh is, it's an ingredient that has been in the pot of yourself for so long that it's almost impossible to change. Not impossible, almost impossible. And so by the time we are 30, by the time we are 40, most of who we are is just these malakats. By the time we're 30, 40, we're not making decision for every single thing. Most of it is on autopilot. Most of it is hardwired. Most of it is a habit which have turned into compulsion. The way we react to other people, the way we deal with the bad news, the way we see the world. Whether we can have a positive view of the world or a negative view of the world. Because these patterns, these malakats are not just actions. It's not only about, for example, when you wake up. It's not just if you go to gym or not. It's not just about your posture. Again, your posture is something you make yourself. Live in a certain way, your posture will go that. Change that, it will become like this. But it's not just these actions, it's also your attitudes, the way you see the world, what you see in the world, how much you enjoy it, whether you're pessimistic or optimistic, how difficult it is for you to deal with the sad news. All of these are the things you learned, either when you were younger, but by the time we're 30, 40, most of it have become malakeh so hard that it's so difficult to change. And now it makes sense why a lot of grandpas or grandmas they never change. It's so difficult for them to change. Because so many patterns have become so strong that it's not easy to fix it. It's not easy to change it, although it's possible. It's possible. So, this is where all those pebbles, the sediments come. Please recite the salawat. Okay, I'll just mention a few more points and we can continue the rest of it tomorrow. The same thing that we had in Islamic spirituality, because one of the things I said was what? Our religious narrative, if it wants to make sense of our life, has to be congruent with our scientific understanding of the world. Otherwise, we'll be torn apart. The same thing, hal and malakeh, you can find it in science as well. What is one of the things you hear about habits? That habits can basically turn an action, which initially you had to make a decision for, into an impulse. What does that mean? It means that neural pathways will be created in your brain, and every time you do it, they'll become stronger and stronger. More synapses will be formed. Your brain literally changed. And it's like if initially going, for example, from this point to that action, let's say you wake up in the morning, whether you want to go for a walk or not. If the path in your brain from getting up and going for a walk was initially maybe a path that wasn't that clear, it was like a muddy path, the more you do it, it becomes stronger, like a highway even. And it's so much easier to do it. Now, the problem is that the same thing that can help us create good habits can also become true with bad habits. So if we do something which is bad for us, or if it's an attitude, a way of looking at the world. For example, thinking, or tomorrow we'll speak about these habits and patterns of thinking or perceiving the world. Slowly, they can turn into an impulse, but at some points, habits free themselves from higher order control. The motivational core of your brain, the striatum, the OFC, and the amygdala will be partially disconnected from the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. And what happens, literally, it means that you will lose your grip over your actions, which is what we said with malakat. And that's why Again, the Prophet said, I have come to do what? يَضَعْ عَنْهُمْ إِسْرَهُمْ وَالْأَغْلَالَ الَّتِي كَانَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ. I've come to remove the shackles which are keeping you in bondage. One of the ways we're stuck at the surface of the world and we can't see Akhirah right now is that we have put things inside us which are taking our freedom away from us, losing our agency. And it's become something that lives inside us, does not allow us to live freely. And the Prophet says, I've come to help you let go of these. Because what happens is that, we'll discuss that tomorrow. Please recite the salawat. Tonight, inshallah, we're going to be enjoying the Masa'ib by the great Mullah Nuruddin al-Kazemi from one of the most beautiful characters, one of the most beautiful companions of Imam Hussein, Muslim ibn Aqil. I personally really love him. And so please prepare your hearts and let us all enjoy the Masa'ib. Please recite salawat.